Fear Not, Episode 30. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today, you and I are going to be joined by Patrick King. Welcome, Patrick, to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Hey, Billy, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Are you ready to fear not today?
I think so, he said fearfully. Yeah, let's do this.
Patrick King is an international best-selling author and social interaction specialist and conversational coach based in San Francisco, California. He started as a self-proclaimed paralyzed social recluse and knows social life from both sides of the track, precisely the reason he's such an effective speaker and coach. He focuses on using his unique emotional intelligence and understanding of human interaction to break down emotional barriers, instill confidence, and equip people with the tools they need for success. When he's not helping clients conquer the world, he's either fronting an 80s cover band or training for his next 10K. Patrick, can you take a little time to sort of fill in the gaps and maybe give us a little brief glimpse of your personal life?
Oh, of course. So first of all, thanks for that intro. What I say is it sounds like a lot of fancy titles, but I'm just a guy that happens to be a tiny bit better than a lot of people in some small thing. And to fill in the gaps, yeah, it was. The most important part of that is probably that I was a late bloomer. And what I mean by that, I mean late bloomer, and I really do mean paralyzed social recluse. I would have trouble, ordering food in restaurants, ordering food at cafes, just because there was that amount of social interaction. And I know this is an interview about fear. I know this podcast is about fear and overcoming them. And that was the biggest fear I really had. It's just a series of social interactions, conversations with people that, to most people, it's a thing they take for granted. It's an everyday occurrence. But this was so inflated in my mind because of all my negative self-talk, because of my fear of rejection, because of my fear of judgment, that they would think, man, he's stupid. Man, he's going to say something stupid. What he said is stupid. Therefore, everyone's going to laugh at them, or everyone's going to laugh at him. And everyone's just going to, stop paying attention to him because he's so worthless. So that was the fear that I've had since, when I was growing up. Former fat kid, I like to call it. So maybe that's where it came from. But to fill in the gaps, that's where it started. And then, I went through law school, so I'm actually a licensed attorney as well. And then at some point, I just kind of realized I was doing all this coaching on the side. I was conversation coaching. I was online dating coaching. I was date coaching. I was also working as a matchmaker on the side, all while, full-time practicing attorney. At some point, myself and my friends just kind of looked at me and we realized, what am I doing, practicing law? So I guess we can fast forward a little bit. And we can fast forward to right here. So I'll let you ask your next question.
So would you say that being a social recluse is the biggest fear that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, but it's really not like a one singular fear. It's just kind of a background level of fear that I've always had, and it's just something you kind of have to work through when you come from there to kind of where I am now, where I speak and I coach and all on these same topics. But it's like I like to call it, or I like to say that it helps me have that perspective that I can relate to my clients, and that I know exactly what the fears and the pain points are. If you're 6 feet tall, you can't just say, look, just be taller, okay? It just doesn't work that way, right? You can't just do that. Just be confident. Just be not fearful. You have to think of ways to incrementally overcome those things. And, basically, how do you actually get from point A to point B? When you've actually had to do that for yourself, that's when you can have real strategies and understand the struggle, understand the process, and understand what works.
Since I sort of share the same fear, or at least I used to as well, I used to be really terrified of being in public and just talking to people. Maybe you could explain a little bit in further detail how you specifically overcame that fear, because I know it's a pretty common fear.
It is a common fear, which is, it is a common fear. So that what that does is that speaks very deeply about our fear of being judged and our fear of being rejected by people, because that's really what's behind that fear of other people, of talking to other people. It's just you don't want to feel like you're going to do something wrong or say something wrong. You don't want it to go poorly. So instead, you think, okay, well, I'll just avoid it. I'll avoid this. I'll avoid that. And, at some level, or rather on a cumulative level, after that happens for a few weeks, a few months, even years, it's such a cumulative thing that you may not notice it. Your comfort zone grows so small and so tiny, and your social zone grows so small and so tiny that eventually it's very clear to maybe the people around you, but not yourself, that you're kind of living life through this fear and avoidance. This fear and avoidance of this rejection and this judgment. But as to your question, how I actually overcame it, well, it was. I wish I could tell you that there was something like some revelation that that I had, that that people weren't actually judging me, and that people weren't actually paying that much attention to me. That is one thing that's definitely true, and that's one thing to definitely realize and talk about. But that's a logical answer to an emotional problem that we have, right? So that's not helpful. What was helpful was so I did my undergraduate studies in clinical psychology. I have a degree in that. So what is helpful was really exposure therapy, and that's something that people use for true social anxiety. GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, and the real clinical problems. But I kind of adapted a version of that for myself to just kind of try to get over this fear that I was having of just simply even talking to people or looking people in the eye. So what exposure therapy is, for example, if you're afraid of snakes, then, maybe week 1, you look at pictures of snakes, like on a computer. Week 2, you look at real pictures of snakes, like I don't even printed out or a Polaroid or whatever what have you. Week 3, you'll see a snake in the same room, right? They'll be in a cage. It'll be a safe, protected environment. Week 4, you'll get up real close to the cage. You'll feel that exposure. You'll feel that tension, but you'll be safe. Week 5, maybe there'll be no cage. You'll be in the same room with a snake. Week 6, you touch it. Week 7, you touch it with 2 fingers. So you see what I'm saying? It's a gradual exposure. So what I kind of did for myself was a version of that with social things, social anxiety, social interaction, conversation. So it would be something just as simple as okay, today I'm going to make eye contact with one person. The next day I'm going to make eye contact with 2 people. Next day or next week, I'm going to hold eye contact for as long as I can. And then, so that was one mode. The other mode was, what am I going to say to someone? This time, I'm going to say hi. Next time, I'm going to say hi and add a question. Next time, I'm going to say hi and have 2 questions. The third mode was going to be something like, this time, I'm going to break the ice with something. I'm going to just try this thing. I'm going to try to comment on the environment, and then the next time I'm going to try to comment on them. Next time I'm going to try to give a compliment. So it was really just doing these small actions in and environments in ways that I felt safe, so that I was slowly pushing the comfort zone and kind of growing out of the fear. But I don't think that ever happens completely.
Well, that's actually because I was just about to ask you, as I'm sitting here listening, I'm thinking, is there something that you do on a daily basis that helps to keep you, or at least to keep the fear from bay? Because I know that fear never really goes away. But what do you do? So what do you do to keep it away from you?
This is actually, there's something that I do that I actually tell all my clients to do as well. So I bet they'd be interested to know that I actually do it right alongside with them. Is there's a confidence. What I instruct clients to always do is, one of the first matters actually is to construct a kind of confidence resume. So when I say confidence resume, what I mean by that is basically it's a list of the top things, my strengths, the best moments I've had, and I want to get specific on this. The best moments, the best social moments, the moments that I felt where I was in the zone, the moments where I've gotten big laughs, strengths, traits of mine that are, better than other people's around me. So what that does for me is you kind of glance at it every day and you think, oh, right, that's right. I am this type of person. I am that person because I have been that person. Here's the evidence right in front of me. So that goes a long way, in my opinion, to resetting your internal narrative, where because of this confidence resume, you're looking at something and you're seeing a completely different definition of yourself, which on a daily basis, there's a cumulative effect that it does become your new identity after some point, for the most part.
Yeah, that's what part of this that I've been doing with the podcast is talking to neuroscientists, and these habits are like retraining your brain. You're building new neurocircuitry, which I find really fascinating. I like your technique. That's a really good one.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I would imagine, since what you do is you do help people and coach people and on your own journey, that you've come across quite a bit of good resource material. Could you possibly share with us some additional material?
Yeah, of course. One good book is this book by this, I'm blanking on the author's name, Jia Jiang, I believe. It's called Rejection Proof, and it talks about the 100 days of rejection therapy that he did, where he basically tried to get rejected on everything. And I think that's really fascinating, but excuse me. I think that's really fascinating because, number one, he made it his, the definition of success for him was to get rejected. So imagine all the exposure and like the immunity that he built to that. Number two, that completely redefines what we're trying to accomplish and what is good for us. When you define a rejection as your success, that means that you're getting out there and you're doing it. You don't put expectation on yourself. You don't put pressure on yourself. And in a sense, you're very empowered and free. So Rejection Proof by Jia Jiang was a very important book for me to read, just on account of someone doing that and reframing their definition of success to be something that was so reachable, right? To be rejected. That's pretty easy to do. But it also emboldens one to think of that, and to think of that he did it for 100 days, and to think of the fact that that's how he got from point A to point B, where he just doesn't care anymore because he's seen all the negative consequences and he realizes, you know what? It's really, it's not that bad at all. I guess you may have mentioned in the beginning that I am a former / current dating coach, but I don't quite identify with that as much anymore. But that was probably another good resource for me when I was just starting out, because it just had these frameworks, and these frameworks made social interaction, conversations more predictable. And when you feel that something is more predictable, you feel confident going into it. A lot of the problems with social anxiety and conversational anxiety is that it feels unpredictable. You feel like you have to think on your feet all the time. And that's scary because for some of us, we think, oh my gosh, I can't think on my feet. So what actually, getting into the dating space helped me with initially was learning these skills, some of these foundational skills of conversation, how to talk to someone, how to ask better questions, how to tell better stories about myself, how to redirect conversations, and making it more predictable made it so much more comfortable and confident for me to go into. Those are a couple of good resources.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing. Are you ready for the speed round?
I think so, yeah.
What individual that's fiction or real has made the most impact on your life?
It's such a cliche answer, but I have to say my father. I didn't really realize what he did, like as for work and what he did for us as the family until I grew older. But it turns out that I'm very much following in his footsteps, and I can only attribute that to him. And we connect over that at this point as well.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would it be?
Instantly wipe people's expectations of other people and what I really mean is instantly wipe people's entitlements of other people. The burdens and pressure that they put on other people, they should probably put it on themselves instead.
What's your biggest weakness?
Incredibly impatient.
What's your biggest strength?
Creative.
And what's your idea of a vacation?
So I work for myself. I work by myself for the most part. So a vacation to me would just be when everything is going well and I don't have any fires to put out for a week or two, and I just, can work less. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite sound?
Favorite sound? I don't know, like a like a cookie wrapper opening, maybe.
So before we wrap up today, do you have any parting advice for us?
Sure. Fears are fears because you allowed them to be that way. Fears are based on a lack of experience and a lack of exposure. I don't want to use the word ignorance because that's negative, but it's just a lack of awareness of what is involved in fear and, most importantly, what the consequences of the fear are. Once you can have some exposure to that, it's usually not something to be so fearful about.
That's very true. And thank you. Thank you for sharing. Patrick, if someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Oh, you can just reach me at my website, patrickkingconsulting.com. And, I love hearing from people. I love hearing questions, comments, concerns, whatever. You can go to Amazon, type Patrick King in, and you can find any of my books as well. So, yeah, hope people reach out.
Great. And I want to thank you, Patrick, for coming onto the show today. It's been really great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.